Hello and welcome to another 5G update. I'm Phil Harvey. I'm an editor here at Light Reading, and joining me today is Gabe Brown, an analyst at Heavy Reading. Gabe, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks for making some time for me. We just finished this week. We just finished the 5G Ecosystem Digital Symposium, which you chaired and provided lots of content for. It was a very interesting symposium because we're sort of covering, I guess, the opportunities within 5G and sort of where the market's come so far, what's still left to do, and then maybe what some of the opportunities are in that. I guess that's a good place to start. I was interested to see the carrier presentations, obviously. So Telecom Italia spoke on the first day of the symposium. What did you find unique or sort of interesting about Telecom Italia's approach to 5G?
A guy called Giovanni Romano from TIM Architecture and Innovation Division gave the presentation. A couple of things. One is Giovanni himself has been involved in 5G since before day one. If you see what I mean, he's really kind of been deep in the whole process. So he's one of these people who's just so steeped in it all that he's great to talk to.
Yeah.
TIM specifically, Telecom Italia Mobile. That's why we say TIM.
Right. Not just some guy named Tim. It's just, why are they always talking about me? Anyway, sorry.
Not that Tim, not Tim Apple or whoever. But so one of the things about TIM, and particularly if you take a little bit wider the Italian market, they have a great spectrum position in Italy, for example, for 5G particularly. They paid a lot of money for their spectrum, but the operators, they have a very good sort of spectrum position. They've built out good networks. I think, the cost of the spectrum's meant they've had to make use of it and build good networks.
Right, yeah.
But particularly, you see a really interesting thing in Italy for TIM, the other operators, but also the kind of surrounding industry, where they do a lot of work on kind of working with the different sectors on actually trying to develop the use cases, the beyond smartphone use cases. So whether that's safety applications, connected ambulance applications, there's just a whole program of that right across Italy. And it's, we don't hear about it much if we're in the UK or if you're in the US or wherever. But I've seen this a lot. They've got this great program there, and it seems to be kind of making progress.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I do think the industry, players like the operators do need to, work hand in hand with the manufacturing, healthcare, vertical industries really tightly to sort of figure out how to best use this technology. Because right now there's a bunch of use cases happening. There's a bunch of, I guess industrial applications, but when they sort of start working together earlier, I think the use cases become more interesting and maybe more integrated into the whole process of whatever they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the points I made actually in my introduction to that panel is 5G is going very well. Things are looking good. We can talk about that. Yeah. But there's still two big problems. One is coverage. That's solvable, and I think that gets addressed. More networks, basically. But the big one is how to actually now go and innovate on this 5G platform, so-called. And, we've had this idea of there's a race to 5G between all the different regions and all of that. Yeah. Well, if there is a race, the real race is going to be how quickly you actually build applications and services on the 5G network. I don't think it's really about how many sites you get live, and it's actually building that upper layer of the services. Mm-hmm. And there, I think, candidly, operators do have a lot more to do, and they need to. So they're doing a lot of work. They have these things. We had someone from the 5G Open Innovation Lab. She was a speaker on there, Caroline Chan. Yeah. They're doing a lot of work, but all of these telcos, they have their own innovation lab, right? And they get partners in, and they kind of co-develop and co-create and things. That's really fine. That's a great thing to do. But if you put yourself in the shoes of these developers, these content companies, gaming companies, whoever they might be, industrial companies, they want to develop an application that they can kind of run across operators, right? They don't want to develop specifically for Verizon or T-Mobile, or they want to support also AT&T, and then maybe they want to go and put it across operators in another region in Western Europe or something like that. And at that level, I don't think the operator community is doing enough to really make it easy and help these companies actually make money on the 5G platform.
Yeah, I think there's been the carriers are quite infatuated with their labs, and they like showing pictures of scruffy looking gentlemen sitting on beanbag chairs and coding and all that kind of stuff. And but the actual ideas for the industrial internet, 5G especially, are going to come from the industry itself, like you said, and they're going to be far more pragmatic than a one carrier approach to all of this. So yeah, that's always worth remembering, and I think that's where keeping an eye on Telecom Italia and companies that have operators that have that kind of had that head start in in this part of the 5G race, if you will. It's going to be more interesting. So that wasn't obviously the only thing talked about in the second day of the symposium. It was focused a lot on private networks. So what did you learn about private networks that you didn't already know, or sort of what's new that's developing there?
I mean, we had a great discussion. It was just on Wednesday. I think the best part of it, we had a guest speaker from 3UK private networks, a lady called Catherine Gull. 3UK is a mobile operator, and it's a European kind of operator group owned by a big Hong Kong investor entrepreneur kind of group. But anyway, they've been around since 3G. That's what they're called, 3. Challenger type operator. Now, Catherine, who is the sort of leads a business development for the specialist private networks group, just kind of took us through how they got that group set up. It happened a few years ago. They were right on the leading edge of all of this. And she told us, went for a couple of things, but in particular, the example of the world's first private network deployment in a commercial airport, of any scale, which they deployed in Heathrow Airport. It's the main airport into London, and it was so they could run aircraft operations, runway operations a lot more reliably. They'd had a couple of issues and things like that. And so she took us through this example, and it was really interesting. From there, we could kind of extrapolate into other industries and the requirements and why they needed a private network, not a public network.
Right. Yeah, that was about what I was about to ask, is like what was sort of the reasoning behind, why not just do it on the same network that everything else is running on, and just keep adding capacity and so on and so forth.
Well, the large majority of private networks are isolated from the carrier public network, and a number of reasons. Primarily, it's because if you're designing a private network, you have kind of requirements, particularly for availability. So, is it working? That you can't. You can't ask the public operator to support. So if you have a base station go down on a public network, the neighboring site picks up the traffic and they come out and fix it and put it right. And it's a day or two or whatever it is to get it right. If you can't afford a day or two waiting, you can't afford it, right? So you have to have a different design, and it has to be something that isn't, the operational model that goes with it isn't part of a public network model, so you want, it's basically it's availability. You want it always there, you want it always working, and you want to specify it to your set of applications. The big difference on that front will be not just failover recovery, but things like we're doing a lot more uplink on these private networks. Public networks are configured for downlink mobile broadband, but if you're taking HD, ultra HD video streams in from remote monitoring, remote control equipment, that's all uplink. So the network needs to be set up, fundamentally in a different way. Yeah,
no, that's a good point. Two good points there. I just had a brief cartoon nightmare scenario of somebody on the landing planes having to call and sit on hold or fill out a trouble ticket for their network problem. It's like that's also why we have private networks, so they don't have to do that. Let's see. So anyway, the 5G Ecosystem Digital Symposium is you can get to it from going to lightreading.com and searching for 5G ecosystem, and it's also in the site's hamburger menu. You can go to the conference archives and watch these presentations again. Before I let you go, I want to talk about Apple a little bit. Apparently, they've announced a 5G iPhone. Did you know about that? It was kept kind of quiet.
Yeah, I did. I think I heard something.
Okay, good. So, during the presentation of the Apple iPhone, they really spent a lot of time talking about 5G, and I think much to everyone's surprise, because usually they're very device centric or very, focused on a particular service or something like that. They spent a good bit of time talking about the network, what difference the network makes, and that sort of thing, and then backing into the different changes they've made in the design of the device itself. Did you find that surprising, and why do you think Apple is I guess made 5G such a centerpiece of this next iPhone announcement?
Yeah, I did find it surprising. I think a lot of people did. Just the amount of focus on it, kind of, it was well trailed. You know it's going to happen, but the amount of focus they put on it, I found it surprising. But I think they were right, and I've kind of explained. So why it's surprising is, if you use a 5G service today on a smartphone, you get fast downlink and it's great and it's several hundred megabits. Maybe you get a gig if you're, ideally placed and all of that. But it's not fundamentally something you really notice how you interact with your phone or your device or your services. Not really at the moment. So you think for a company that's so famed for this focus on user experience, why are they talking about 5G when...
Yeah, it's just something that happens in the background.
It's just something that happens in the background. So from that point of view, definitely a surprise. But still, I think they were right to do it.
Do you think they're right because of where we are with 5G, it being kind of a new thing, or because of maybe Apple's worldview and how that's changed over the last decade or so?
Yeah, so there are quite a few kind of ways of explaining why they did it, and there's some of them quite interesting. My sort of personal take on it, and I don't discount the other views we maybe talk about at the moment, but it's first of all that they kind of understand that there's enough information to know that while 5G isn't quite there yet, it's gonna be there. We now have the information experience to say this is going to be amazing, it is going to be a really good service. Mm-hmm. But they also know now that they are the leading provider. They are the number one provider of smartphones onto a lot of networks, not everywhere in the world, but in a lot of countries, a lot of markets. The number one device you'll find is some form of Apple iOS device. Yeah. I checked actually the stats on this with some colleagues over at Omdia. Mm-hmm. I think they said something like 45% of the devices on the network now in the US are Apple devices. Yeah. It's the high 30s in UK. It's 50% in Japan. So,
wow.
That's a systemically important company, right?
Yeah, and it's a premium, or was thought to be the premium, the high-end smartphone, but now it's becoming the mainstream smartphone. And I always look at the Flickr thing to show like what types of cameras people are using. And iPhones, various generations of iPhones are always usually the top 5 and have been for years. So they're definitely
a little bit in use. A little bit it's to their credit that their phones last longer now. An Apple iPhone probably lasts twice as long as an Android and that sort of thing. So that's one of the reasons why the in-use devices have gone up, even if sales are 25% or something of that nature. Mm-hmm. But it also shows if you're selling a phone now and people are going to have it in life for 3-4 years, 5 years, then that's quite a long runway, right? So it's worth putting the 5G in. So I think that's a part of it. The other thing is that's interesting though is, because it's so important, operators actually, they kind of pace their network investment, their build out around the iPhone cycle. They actually optimize networks to work well with iPhone. These are still nevertheless premium customers in the most case. So
absolutely, yeah.
So I think Apple actually, as well as liking the technology, I think they actually felt, and they do have a responsibility actually to kind of get on and and participate in the ecosystem in a way that helps everybody move forward. The carriers, the vendors, they've known for a year or more that there was an iPhone pegged for this quarter. And that's actually spurred investment in, network equipment and technology, but also the rollout. If Apple had just gone, you know what, there's a few things we don't quite like here, we're going to sit out a little while and let you fix it. That's no message to the rest of the ecosystem. So I feel like they had a responsibility and they fulfilled it.
Right. You don't think they just saw the first couple of complainy gadget reviews and thought, maybe 5G's not ready yet. We'll just push it back another year. And then the telco networks, the execs set themselves on fire.
Yeah. I'm sure they thought about that, but I think that they're too much. they're in the ecosystem, are enmeshed in
Yeah.
it, and their success rides with the carrier success and vice versa.
Yeah, I think that's it's definitely an interesting point, because they're in such a different spot than they were when they first introduced the iPhone, which is kind of the lens that a lot of journalists still use to cover them, is that sort of, they're disrupting the carriers, are, they're building it because they want to, and because it's a cool gadget, not because they're integrated with the carriers, or because that sort of thing. And I think that's just, Apple's just in a completely different place now. It is the market, it makes the market. And so yeah, they're definitely going to have that more uh, virtuous cycle with the carriers and the component vendors and everybody else who depends on the iPhone to make their financials. And all I do is take cat photos with it. So yeah, it's kind of
I chatted with a couple other people about it. The other reason people are talking about is, well, Apple's now in services, it's streaming a lot of video and so forth, so they're going to want better connection. They're much more I don't know if I buy this totally. They've always wanted a good connection, right? Because
yeah.
whether you're sourcing your video somewhere else, they still want it to work well. But maybe that's a part of it.
Then yeah, now they're kind of more deliberately in the content game themselves. So yeah, it does make sense that they would have the best possible experience to display and go get that content. And I think I think that's they've always kind of been high on that from a user experience point of view.
Yeah,
But
so it could be part of it. But could you compromise content from another source? I don't think so. I don't think their content's that great that they can drive it that way.
The thing is, they still use gaming. Apple has its own gaming service, but it also knows that mobile games are the best mobile games arguably are developed by companies that it has no control over. So the same with like Netflix and other providers. They know that consumers. Believe it or not, now I don't, but some consumers have a life outside of Apple's ecosystem. I don't know what's out there. I just do what they tell me. So I just, I'm still a fanboy, as tech journalists keep saying that like that's a thing. Anyway, before I get completely off track here, let's wrap up. The 5G Ecosystem Digital Symposium. The information is on Light Reading. You can go to the Light Reading top left-hand menu and pull down the conference archives, or search 5G Digital Symposium. And for the Light Reading podcast, in case you're hearing the audio only version of this, the Light Reading podcast can be found on any of your podcast players, but also at lightreading.com/LRpod. Gabriel Brown from Heavy Reading, thank you so much for your time today.
Hey, thank you, Phil. Take it easy.
Alrighty.